go. Let's go to space.
Humanity's expansion into space will happen much faster than you think. The availability of microgravity and partial artificial gravity will enable activities and ventures that you just can't do on Earth. Activities such as manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, tourism, and many others. The question is, what are the steps that move us toward that? We're in the midst of the first step right now, a dramatic decrease in the cost of launching to space. This enables activities to be profit-making now that 10 years ago were uneconomical. The next step, these payloads need some place to go, a destination. And the great majority of these activities will need pressurized vessels containing air, they need water, they need power, they need thermal control so you don't get too hot or too cold. And of course, particular commercial activities require specialized facilities and services. Finally, we need to bring some of these payloads back to Earth. Right now, the only facility providing all those is the International Space Station. But the problem is the ISS was designed as a research and development facility, not as a full-scale production facility. Space is limited, thermal control is limited, power is limited, and because of that, access is limited. That means there are thousands of commercial missions bottlenecked by the ISS and clamoring for an alternative. That is the need Above is addressing. Meet Prometheus, a modular infrastructure platform that meets a wide range of government and commercial applications. Prometheus offers in months instead of years access to custom pressurized environments, facilities, and services to support the needs of on-orbit product development and manufacturing at a fraction of the price of the ISS. Above greatly reduces costs by hosting multiple payloads on each flight with automation and using low-risk commercial off-the-shelf technologies. COTS technologies are very important because they avoid the cost, schedule, and performance risk of developing new technologies. Prometheus enables the development of the next generation of commercial space companies and is the cornerstone of our development program leading to long-term habitable space stations. The key to securing first-mover advantage is heritage. The Above team, with its decades of experience in spaceflight, space technologies, and mission architecture, is ideally positioned to take advantage of commercial off-the-shelf technologies, putting them together in creative ways to do things that have never been done before. Between myself and Robert Miyake, we have enough experience in spaceflight missions and operations to know what works in space and what doesn't work in space, and this greatly reduces the risks for the missions that we're designing in the future. And that's why the Department of Defense has entrusted us with a contract to develop our Archimedes platform, a platform that is rapidly deployable and a flat surface that supports many different applications such as radar, high data rate communications, and energy transmission and generation. My colleagues and I started Above because we realized we had a fast track to allow humanity to move to space and to make a profit doing so. We already have the letters of commitment to make this profitable from the very first mission. Prometheus is the next step in a wide range of critical infrastructure solutions. This is happening. We are going. And in phase 2, we'll begin to offer return of payloads to Earth. If you believe in the mission of providing more space in space, join us.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I am Tim Alatorre, Chief Operating Officer of Above Space Development Corporation, and this is our Fridays with Above Space call, our investor call for December 22nd, 2023. And just looking at who's in attendance here, we have people from New York, Illinois, Chicago, Colorado, New Jersey, Hamburg, Minnesota, St. Louis, California, Louisiana, South Carolina, Colorado Springs. There's some other international ones, Switzerland. So thank you all for being here today. And we also have, as you notice by the little thumbnail pictures here, we've got some other special guests here today. I'd like to welcome Dr. Tom Spilker, our CTO. And Rhonda Stevenson, our CEO, is joining us today. Welcome, Rhonda. Rhonda, I'll turn it over to you. You can start us off today.
All right, great. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Just a few days out from the Christmas holiday. I'm a little under the weather today. I don't really have a great voice, so I'm going to talk as long as I can and then hand it back to Tim and Tom. But the most important message that we want to convey to all of our supporters, friends, and investors, thank you. Thank you for your continued support. Because of your efforts, because of your support, we've been able to get to the point where we now have a mission called Prometheus. And we're very, very excited to share some of those details with you today. And it is our wish from the Above family that you all enjoy a wonderful, peaceful holiday season and a very prosperous new year. Tim, back to you.
Thanks, Rhonda. And I'll just mention here, Rhonda is the type that doesn't make excuses. She just works nonstop, rain or shine, health or sickness. And this call was really important for her to be on, so she could thank all of you and appreciate it. And thank you, Rhonda, for being here. I know it's not easy to be on camera when you're not feeling 100%. So this year, though, a lot has happened. We were going through this. In fact, just right before we got on the call, we remembered two major things that we didn't have in the overview slide, so we quickly added those. But it seems like forever ago, but back in January, we commissioned the first comprehensive artificial gravity research report with Dr. Mae Jemison, a former NASA astronaut, and Dr. Ronke Olabisi at UC Irvine. That report is still available. If you haven't read it yet, go to above.space/gravity. And it's been a fantastic resource, not just for us, but I've started seeing other people mentioning it and referencing it. We made a big effort with Dr. Jemison, Dr. Olabisi, to pull together everything that's known about artificial gravity, microgravity, the effects on human physiology. And they actually went above and beyond. They also dug into best practices for design of artificial gravity platforms. So Landmark, really excited about that. I'm grateful for their work there. And then in February, we did a couple of fun things. So one, we sent some of our team, they started doing some spacesuit research. As Tom mentioned in the video we just watched, and Tom, what better introduction to be on a call than that? That was fantastic. We're always looking at COTS, commercial off-the-shelf components. And right now, a lot of spacesuits are bespoke, especially when it comes to the gloves in particular. Everybody's hands are different. Those are all custom, but even the suits themselves tend to be very custom. And so we started doing research and met with some fabricators who are doing spacesuits that are adjustable for different body types. So you can see here Eric Ward from our team. He's practicing in a very dangerous environment, the streets of Northwestern Oregon. And then Rhonda, you had a fantastic opportunity. Do you want to talk about what happened in Africa in February?
Absolutely. I was invited by Dr. Jemison to attend her Nairobi Nexus 2023, where I was the lead, and I ran a workshop called The Business of Space. And that was a pooling of folks from around the globe on what are the next steps with respect to business development, and how do you discover opportunities when you're looking at commercial enterprise and the development of space architecture. And so that was a very successful, well-attended workshop. And so then the follow-up this coming year is to attend a similar event in Nairobi and run not only this workshop again, but also to provide one of the crucibles for that event.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that we're always talking about is making space available for everybody, providing more space, and then not limiting who has access to that. And I think one of the things that I was really impressed by that trip, Rhonda, was just how much excitement there is in Africa for space and space technologies, and at the same time, how they've really been shut out from what's available, right? So we're working to change that. Another big milestone in February, we we announced we won the first contract this year with AFRL. This was for our beamed energy project, and we've done a lot on this year. We'll do a recap of that in a little bit here, but that's when that kicked off. And also another big thing that happened this year in February is we started our relationship with Morgan Stanley. And Ron, I'm going to pass it back to you. Sorry, this is another one I think you can talk on the best. You want to talk about Morgan Stanley briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are partnered with the wealth management side of Morgan Stanley, and that is a relationship that continues to grow. It began back in February of last year, and this has led to several conversations with some folks in Saudi Arabia. So I see a trip to Riyadh coming up this January.
Yeah, they've been fantastic, not only in these different connections, but also just helping us just on the business development side, focusing, messaging, fine-tuning our deck and our pitch, and they have access to literally the whole world of financial institutions. So they've been a fantastic partner. And then rolling from that into March, we officially rebranded to Above, and that is the name you see on everything. Our shirts. I think, Tom, you're wearing your Above shirt, and of course the logos everywhere. And I think, Rhonda, we were talking about this right before the call. The rebrand and the corporate reorg were really motivated out of us focusing and not so much changing what we were doing, but having the corporate structure and brand more closely align with the various things that we are doing. We're not just doing assembly on orbit. We're looking to build out that entire space ecosystem and providing opportunities for all sorts of things. So, Tom, do you have any thoughts on the rebrand, and do you like the logo?
Well, yeah, it was very appropriate to do the rebranding, and certainly the logo is pointing upwards, which is what I do when I say Ad Astra.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of hidden symbology in the logo. It seems simple, but there's a lot going on there. Also in March, we launched our first raise on Silicon Prairie and transferred our transfer agent away from Net Capital, where many of you invested initially, to that platform. And I've been getting a lot of emails every day from a lot of you investors who are trying to get your account set up on Silicon Prairie. Feel free to email me directly, tim@above.space. And we try to respond within minutes to those investor inquiries. So if you haven't heard back from me in like a day, just ping me again, because more than likely your email got buried in the hundreds that come through every day. But the Silicon Prairie team has been incredibly responsive and supportive. They treat you like you're our only investor. That's their goal, and we feel like you're our only investor. We need many investors, but we want to make you feel like you're special, because you are. One of the great benefits of the Silicon Prairie platform is it's unified. All of the raises, the warrants that we offered, it's the one-stop shop for all the investment activities. We are also looking into the regulatory hurdles of being able to offer trading on the platform in the future, to where you can buy and sell shares before if we ever go public or before that ever happens. And then we've also, as part of this, rolled into the platform a Tiger Mark insurance policy, and that's a special form of insurance that if there's certain criteria where you could claim that insurance, and if you're interested, details are on the website. But another level of protection for you for your investment. And then probably one of the biggest shifts is on Net Capital. All of the shares there were held by a proxy, which held all the voting rights. And so, Net Capital is just voted as a block for all of you. With a new platform, you'll actually have opportunities to vote. Your shares will have a say, and you can exercise voting rights. So that's a big shift. And then in April, we opened our new integration facility, and some of you have been there. Hopefully we'll do some more events and get more of you there. But that's where a lot of the magic's been happening, and that's where things are going to continue to happen moving forward. We got D-Star over there, as well as our other projects. And in April, Jeff, he went to Luxembourg. We were invited, and I should have looked this up. I don't remember exactly what the name of the program was. It was through ESRIC, which was, it's a, how would you describe it? Tom, Rhonda, help me out here. It's like an accelerator program.
It's an accelerator program that was hosted by the Luxembourg Space Agency.
Yeah, and so Jeff was able to go there and make a pitch to a lot of ESA representatives, and we made some great connections there. Luxembourg is actually a very unique sort of space hub in the European Union. So that was a great opportunity. And then May, probably one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing that happened this year, which I put in the deck and we added right before this, we signed our 5-year Umbrella Space Act agreement with NASA. And Tom, do you want to talk about the significance a little bit and maybe a little bit how we've used it to date?
Okay. If you're talking about going into space, there are certain things you have to do with spacecraft as you build them and test them and so on. Well, you have to test them. And some of the tests involve facilities that are just not trivial. It's not just a matter of hooking up some voltmeters and ammeters and so on to things. You need a shake table to make sure that your spacecraft and demonstrate that your spacecraft can handle the launch environment. You need thermal vac chambers to show that the spacecraft can survive in the conditions in outer space. There are many of these facilities that are very, very expensive. And there are commercial places where you can rent time in these, and that gets very expensive. But Marshall Space Flight Center has these facilities for end-to-end testing of spacecraft, getting them ready to go to space. And because we have this Space Act agreement with Marshall, we now have access to those facilities. We have to pay for it, of course, but it's very affordable compared to the other options. And so we're very happy to have this Space Act agreement so that we have access both to the facilities at Marshall Space Flight Center, but also the expertise at Marshall Space Flight Center.
Yeah, I think that is one of the really unique things, as opposed to going to like a commercial testing facility. There's the people there at the facilities who have been testing things and developing technologies for decades. And so we've made great use of the flat floor facility to date. And Tom Bryant, who works there, I shouldn't say works there, he runs the flat floor. Every sort of docking procedure that could be imaginable, he's helped innovate and develop some of those things and tested them there. Deployment mechanisms for satellites, hinges, and other actuators. So while we're there and going through our test plan and talking about what we want to do, he provides feedback and insight and recommendations, and it's been fantastic. Tom?
For those of you unfamiliar with what a flat floor is, if you've ever seen an air hockey table, you have this puck that is riding on a very thin cushion of air on top of the table, and it gives it an almost frictionless, very close to frictionless environment. The flat floor at Marshall kind of turns that around. Instead of like an air hockey table, the air being pushed up through the table to hold the puck up. In their situation, the puck that they call an air bearing pumps air downward to provide that cushion of air, and you get a very close to frictionless surface. So you can test very, very small forces compared to the size of objects that are on that floor. They will move almost frictionlessly, just like you do in space. And so you can test such things as rendezvous techniques, attitude control techniques, and so on. It's a very, very useful facility.
And expensive if we were going to build one ourselves. I think
I think that it's important that you give a few details about our accessibility to the thermovac and how that's going to impact our upcoming mission.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Okay. what thermal vacuum, what they do is you put your spacecraft or whatever test article you're wanting to test inside this large vacuum chamber. They pump it down to a vacuum similar to space so that you don't get any cooling by convection. Here on Earth, if something gets hot, it makes the air around it get hot. It transfers some of that heat to the air, and the air convects away. The hot air rises, so it moves away and gets replaced by cooler air that then gets heated up and so on. And that helps to take heat away from the object that's getting hot. Well, in space, that doesn't happen. You don't have convective cooling. So you have to test your systems to make sure that they're designed to get rid of any excess heat by other mechanisms like thermal radiation and so on. So you put an object in this chamber, pump it down to a vacuum so it has that vacuum environment of space, and then you light it up on one side of it as if the sun is shining on it. And of course, that's a tremendous source of heat. So you're heating the spacecraft from that one direction due to simulated sunlight. On the other side, they have chambers in the walls, little call them vesicles in the walls that they run liquid nitrogen through, and that simulates the extreme cold of blank space. So you're heating the spacecraft from one side with this very strong sunlight. You're radiating heat from the other side of the spacecraft into the cold of space, and the chamber tests your spacecraft to be able to handle that huge contrast in environments looking from one direction as opposed to the other direction, and making sure that their spacecraft can handle that.
And then looking forward to Prometheus and other projects like the Archimedes Beamed Energy Project, we're looking to use those chambers. Archimedes in particular, we're queuing up to do a test early next year, specifically because of those thermal differentials and how they might affect the structure, the actual geometry of that platform. So they're very
Now,
important.
30 years ago, the cost for building just a vacuum chamber without the sun simulator and without the liquid nitrogen vesicles, the cost of a vacuum chamber was about $10,000 per cubic yard. And Marshall has facilities with 100, 200 cubic yards of volume available. So it's a very expensive facility, and we have access to use those facilities.
And we do have two small vacuum chambers in our integration facility on loan from Tom, but we can only fit maybe hundreds of cubic centimeters in them. They're not very big,
but they're good for testing components.
Yeah, good for small component and system testing. And I'll just add one other thing on this. I know we're spending a lot of time on this one point, but as I mentioned, it's one of the bigger things this year. The interesting thing about this agreement, as opposed to going under a contract where there's set deliverables, is our Space Act agreement is for NASA to support us in all aspects of space station development. And so as opposed to shoehorn into certain departments, we have the flexibility to really draw on all the expertise and facilities at Marshall. And we're not being driven by NASA's schedule. We can move at our schedule, which, if you understand how government works, that's a huge benefit. So any other thoughts on the Space Act agreement? It's going to come up again in a couple future slides, but any other thoughts?
Well,
Okay.
just
Okay.
one. We were granted the Space Act agreement, what was it, 3 or 4 months after we applied for it?
No, it was almost a year. We started the process. By the time we finally got the application approved to be submitted, it was about 4 months going through national, but the whole process was about 10 months from start.
We have had other companies hear that and raise their eyebrows and say, how did you do that? We've had our application in for 2 years and haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, through national, it was pretty quick. And that's one other thing I didn't mention. There's a lot of support and excitement about what we're doing at Marshall. And I think that's been a big factor. We also have friends at Kennedy and International now. So there's a lot of love for what we're doing around the NASA ecosystem, which I think helped in that regard as well. And then moving on to May, we got another AFRL contract. This was for our space-based photovoltaic manufacturing initiative. And that was a phase 1 SBIR award. So it was a very short contract. That work's wrapped up now. But we did that in collaboration with Ascent Solar. Should also probably mention on the Archimedes, we're doing that in collaboration with Electric Sky. So we've got some great partners on these projects. And then in May, we started work on our IOTA, I should say started manufacturing on our IOTA test platform. And there's a couple of production pictures there. And then in June, we did our big grand opening, ribbon cutting. There's some familiar faces in that one picture there. I see Rhonda and Tom. The Chamber of Commerce came out and we had a great open house. Again, some of you were in attendance, so thank you for those of you who flew or drove in for the event. And this was an invite only based on investment levels. So some of you might not have gotten that in, but for those who did and came, thank you. And then also in June, we did our first testing on the flat floor. So this was the IOTA Mark I test. And that lower right-hand corner, actually, you can see Tom and Rhonda standing in front of one of the vacuum chambers there at Marshall. So you can kind of see the size. They're not
with
coffee can size, a little bigger.
With Tom Bryan.
Yes, Tom Bryan's in the white lab coat there on the left. Yep. And actually, my son, Cooper, he's in the bottom right. He was interning with us this summer and helped us with the IOTA project. This was a fantastic demo day and testing day. Tom actually designed the rocket engines that we used for IOTA. And so we had done computer calculations and benchtop testing, but to get it on the flat floor in the near frictionless environment and test it was fantastic. And nothing exploded, right, Tom?
What was that? It kind of broke up.
Oh, I said nothing exploded. It didn't have a catastrophic failure.
The way I say it is things that were supposed to spun, and things that were not supposed to spin didn't spun. Things that were supposed to go bang went bang, and things that were not supposed to go bang didn't go bang.
Yeah. So
that rocket engine points out one aspect of our company. We have a lot of experience and hands-on experience among our staff, and we had been looking at providers, and this is often what we do. We look for commercial off-the-shelf technologies to do whatever it is that we want to do. We just put them together in ways that are creative, innovative, and accomplish things that haven't been done before. But in this case, we were looking at where can we buy a small rocket engine, a certain size, certain amount of thrust, to put on our IOTA piece of hardware. And there were a couple of companies that were options, but they gave us a schedule that, oh yeah, we can provide these in less than a year. Well, we needed them much sooner than that. And so I said, well, if nobody's schedule can meet ours, let's just design and build our own. So in January and February, I designed the engines. In March, we had them out to a manufacturing facility, a high precision machine shop. And in May, we had rocket engines to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was fantastic. And that's one of the great things about being here in also. There's high precision machine shops pretty much on every corner. You can you run into them by accident. So we have a shop that's just around the corner from an integration facility. I was able to go over there, check on the progress. They were able to give us updates, and as Tom designed it, the engines performed. So it was a fantastic day. And then everything that's going on with IOTA, this is all leading forward to what we're going to be doing with Prometheus and eventually Pioneer and Voyager. You can buy commercial off-the-shelf components for 3-axis stabilized spacecraft, but if you want to spin them up and create artificial gravity, that's not something that is currently available. And so we are actively working on that problem, not just in PowerPoint or in computer simulations, but with real hardware. And then in July, from one hardware to another hardware, our Archimedes hardware showed up in the shop, and Tom and I were back rolling around on the ground and having all sorts of fun on that one.
He
and
means
then
literally rolling. When we needed to deflate the inflatable part of it, there was some air still staying in parts of it, and I literally got down on the ground and rolled on it to push the air towards the outlet vent.
Tom isn't just good with ones and zeros. He's also good with wrenches and hammers. So, and in July, we had an opportunity to go to San Diego, and I think Rhonda, it was you and Jeff that went to Comic-Con, and Rhonda spoke on a panel. The picture's not very great in the lower left-hand corner. Rhonda is there. I was trying to find one where you were actually presenting, but that was a great opportunity to meet a lot of our investors and our supporters, and we had some commemorative T-shirts made. And I think at that event, San Diego Comic-Con, is when we first announced that we would be flying people's images to space. We didn't name it Prometheus yet, but we started teasing it prior to the official launch. And so people's Comic-Con pictures that were taken there are going to be flying on Prometheus this next year. And in August, we had the hardware assembled for Archimedes, and we started doing the flatness testing. And really the testing was more on the mathematics and the algorithms to take the inputs of what the flatness of that surface was, adjusting them with computer algorithms that Tom came up with, and adjusting the flatness. And here you can see in these two graphics our studies. We shot, I can't remember what the number was, it's in the documentation somewhere, but I think we shot 1.5 million data points over the surface to analyze the flatness.
This is with a LiDAR system that we brought into the facility.
Tom,
so we were able to
sorry to cut you both off, but I think that it would be useful to go into the relevance of why an extremely flat surface is relevant.
Yeah, I think there's two points there. I'll let Tom speak to the extremely flat surface part, but also the rapid deployment. We're looking at creating very large flat surfaces. If you wanted to send up a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter flat plate, that wouldn't be an issue. But we're talking about many tens of meters, and that's where our, the above expertise in building structures comes into play. So we have a very large platform that can launch in a very small package, and the structure itself is fairly low fidelity and relatively easy to manufacture. We're not manufacturing it in a clean room. And then from a relatively rough structure, we can create a super flat surface. And Tom, why do we care about flatness in space?
This is especially important when you're dealing with radio signals and either receiving or transmitting radio signals with a very short wavelength. The wavelength is determined by the frequency of the signals. But if that wavelength is very short, then you want a surface where each of the little receiving elements mounted on that surface is hearing the incoming or sending the outgoing radio signal in a way that you can look at as everybody in a choir being in harmony. If somebody's a little flat and somebody else is a little sharp, it really takes away from the sound of the choir. Well, if elements of this transmitting array or receiving array are a little bit out of position, it kind of gets them out of harmony with the rest of them. And this has a negative impact on how much signal you receive or how much signal you transmit, and how tightly you can narrow the beam of the signal if you're sending. So you need a very flat surface to make sure that all of these elements are what they call in phase. They're in harmony with each other. And what we're doing here is providing a way of taking a basic structure that's not something that's manufactured to thousandth of an inch tolerances, which would be extremely expensive if you're trying to make something that's rapidly deployable. but you take just a rather coarse structure, and with an adjustment mechanism, you make a very finely tuned flat surface from that structure to handle such things as the radio antennas that need that flatness.
Mhm. And this was the Mark I structure. We've actually got Mark II current on our floor right now, and we'll be iterating on that in the coming year. There's a couple questions in chat here. I think it's probably a good time to interject them. There's a question about, are these being self-assembled or is there some external mechanism assembling them? So we've showcased D-Star in the past, and the Star platform is a assembly machine that spits out trusses. Prometheus and Archimedes aren't so much assembled as deployed. They launch with everything connected already, and then they deploy and make connections automatically that allow them to assume their final form. And just looking forward, there's a question here about future projects. So our Pioneer station in a box, that phase 1 station in a box, that is self-assembled or self-deployed. Pioneer station, the full configuration, that would require assembly on orbit. And we have we're working with on robotics and self-controlled drones that would assist with that assembly process. So
I might point out what people are seeing on the screen here. If you look at the upper left image, the green color says, okay, everything is in harmony here. The flatness is quite good there. If it's red or if it's blue, it's telling you things are deviating from that nice flat surface. And in the upper left, you see those points around the edge. Those are where our membrane is attached to the torus structure. Inside of that is where it's important. That's the part of the surface that would be active. And you see that there are red and blue areas that are intruding into that interior. And that tells you that those parts would not be acceptable for the kind of radio systems that we're talking about, or other systems, but specifically radio. And then using our software, we can, with the adjustment mechanism that we've designed into this system, we can adjust the position of those points around the edge to get them into this flat plane. When you look at the lower right image, you see that the entire interior inside of those control points is now green. It's ready to use. Everything is in harmony. And the only colors that you see are outside of those control points where it really doesn't matter. We were able to take the amount of deviation from somewhere around 3/4 of an inch down to less than 1/8 of an inch.
And that was with very coarse hardware on Mark I. Mark and finer fidelity, and the production will be even better. So September, we had some fun. This was a fun month. We did prep for our ISS mission. So we have a mission of our own hardware and components, along with 3 customers that we're providing transport for and services for, to the International Space Station in March. And here we have Nick from ShipShape Urban Farms. He's passing off to Rhonda one of their experiments that it's actually integrated. It's already gone through shock and vibe and thermal bakeout tests. It's ready to fly. We just need to wait for it to now get on the rocket. And I think we don't have the exact launch date yet, but it's in March, and that'll be going up on a SpaceX rocket to the ISS. And then we also got together, since we had teased that we were doing Prometheus, we got together. We had what I'm calling the Ontario whiteboard sessions. We got the senior engineers together in a room, and we really worked through and hashed out what exactly Prometheus would be, and finalized, say, the high level architecture for that. And that's really when we kickstarted the Prometheus project in earnest. So, and it's always great to get us together. And if you saw the investor page prior to Tom's latest video, there was a very rough video where we announced Prometheus that we had on the investment page as a placeholder. That's now gone. So if you saw it, good, you won that one. And then right off the heels of that, I was off to the Space and Underwater Tourism Summit in Europe. And this is our second time participating in this. I was a keynote speaker. This conference is specifically about tourism in the space environment. And I don't think people in the United States really understand that there's more to the world than the United States. Rhonda was in Africa earlier in the year. I was in Europe, and Jeff was in Europe. The world wants to get to space, and there's so many companies and countries who want to participate. There's not space, there's not access. And so we are providing that space and access. And it was fantastic, for me at least, to be able to go and start talking to these companies. And they're very excited about what we're doing. And we will be flying hardware for some of these European entities on Prometheus. And I look forward to doing many, many more. It's also fun to speak Spanish. So that's another plus for me. And then October, this was kind of a feel-good thing. We were privileged, and the ball on this started like last year, I think, and there were some complications, but we were able to sponsor a blind boy who is just, I had the chance to meet him. Rhonda met his mom and grandma. We couldn't meet him because he was in the classes that earlier, but we sponsored him for Space Camp. And this is something that I didn't really know existed, but once a year at Space Camp here in Huntsville, they have, I think it's a University of Virginia, they come in and they retrofit all the space simulators for the visually impaired. So if you think about flying like an airplane or a spacecraft, you think, oh, I need to be able to see. But they do adaptive hardware with audio and tactile responses. So these kids can learn how to fly jets and do space missions. And it was so inspiring to just see these kids not being stopped by any physical barriers. And we talk a lot about making space for everybody. These kids showed me that there's nothing that can stop somebody who wants to participate in space if they're given the opportunity. And we had the opportunity to provide a scholarship for one of these boys who comes from a disadvantaged area in the country, and he actually won an award, which was fantastic. So that was a fantastic thing to be a part of. When we talk about making space for everybody, we're serious about this. We're not just saying it. And then IOTA, or in October, we're back to IOTA. Tom coined the phrase IOTA Phoenix. Between our first test and the second test of IOTA, we chopped that thing to pieces, took it apart completely, and rebuilt it. And we'll get to why in a second, but that was happening in October. So November, we took IOTA back to the flat floor. And Tom, what was the difference between the test earlier in the year and the test in November on IOTA? What was the
test in earlier in the year was what they call 2 degrees of freedom. It was on the flat floor. And if you imagine something sitting on the flat floor, you can rotate it this way, you can move it back and forth and to and fro and so on, but you can't rotate it this way, you can't rotate it this way. So you're limited to the number, what they call degrees of freedom. There were only 3 degrees of freedom, 2 translational, moving back and forth and so on, and 1 rotational. When we got there in November, they have a really special device that allows you to translate in 2 dimensions, but rotate in all 3 other axes of rotation. So we needed to be able to control all of those with our rocket engines and the control systems that control those rocket engines. But with this 5 degree of freedom with all of that rotation, if your balance is not right, when you turn it on and let go, if the center of gravity is too high, it will go clunk and tip off to one direction. So we had to redesign IOTA to take the center of gravity farther down and make it so that when you turn on this, what they call the air bearing, it doesn't immediately tip off to one side. It's stable. And so we had to redesign to move that center of gravity.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just looking at the clock here. We're over time, and we've got a hard stop in 14 minutes. We have a meeting with our launch provider, so we're gonna pick up the pace. Luckily, we're in November, but I'll just add on this one. And Rhonda, if there's anything else you want to add, in the upper right-hand corner there, you can see 3 of the NASA employees there. All of the tests we did there, we had our test plan that we submitted, and NASA oversaw those tests. They marked them off as we went through them, and verified that we met our benchmarks. Not that we're beholden to NASA, but they were there as just a third party to validate what we were doing. And so that's another, fantastic thing, just to have that expertise. Rhonda, anything you want to add to that? You're shaking your head. Okay. And then also in November, we are Archimedes demonstration. And in the interest of time, I won't play the video, but we were able to beam power across our facility, and then using a laser, pop some balloons on the wall. You can go back to the last call. I put the video of our balloon popping on there. But hardware, it functions, it works. It's fantastic.
And
then December,
transmits electric power using microwaves through space.
Yes, yeah, which is pretty exciting. And we've got some more demos for some interested customers coming up in the beginning of the year. So more to be shown on that. And then December, Rhonda, you just got back from DC. Do you want to talk just quickly about what happened there?
Yeah, very quickly. My voice is failing. I was able to go to the White House and the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy and brief them, mainly Dr. Uzo Okoro there, on our Prometheus program and on our Archimedes program. And the reason why that's significant is it puts us at the national level radar of what we're producing, what our hardware looks like, what the advancement of our TRL is, and what our trajectory is moving forward. And so then when there are discussions, resources needed, insight about who's doing what at any given time, because we've done that briefing, we are now part of that conversation.
Yeah, so that was very significant to get that invite to go to the White House and brief them, and Rhonda represented all of us really well. So we'll just end with this. We've got 2 missions coming up in 2024. So Blair's asking in chat, how will we know which launch in March? Trust us, we will let you know. We'll get that information out there. Just tune into the social media and follow our emails. We'll let you know. And there's some more exciting things happening with that as well. And we'll unveil those as that starts to materialize. And then towards the end of next year, Prometheus, and we'll be taking you with us there as well. So that's very exciting. Any closing thoughts, Tom or Rhonda? And I'm sorry, I was getting to some questions as we were going. I don't see many in the chat, so I think we're good for today. We'll do another Q&A at the start of the year. But any final thoughts, Tom, and then Rhonda, we can close with you.
Well, just a quick thought about how we're approaching things. There are a lot of people and a lot of companies, entities out there that look at, for instance, in the lower right in this image, big stations, possibly with artificial gravity and habitability in space, but they have the vision of that without seeing the steps that it takes to get there. One of the things about our company is we have the experience in space and the practical experience to look at all of the steps that it takes to get us from something like Prometheus to something like Voyager Station. So what we're doing is we're navigating all of these steps to get us up there to permanent habitation in space.
Well said, Tom. Rhonda, any closing
thoughts? The only thing that I would add to that is that in these incremental steps of our hardware development, testing at NASA Marshall, and hopefully soon at other facilities, as we de-risk our hardware, as we continue to develop it, we are on a very fast track to going to space. Looking at our launch towards the end of summer next year. We're very excited about it. And as I began this call, I just want to make sure everyone understands that we are so grateful for your support. We're so grateful for your investment. This is what that looks like. This is how that spends, being able to fast track and make these incremental steps and keep our pace, continuing to move forward to an outcome that we all are really excited for, that we'll see in a very near future. So thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you in the new year.